Right now, if you walk into the produce aisle of like your local grocery store,
Hmm.
there is this massive biological illusion taking place.
Absolutely, totally an illusion.
Right, because you're looking at these bright red strawberries, crisp green spinach, and these perfectly uniform summer tomatoes, but it's the dead of January.
Yeah, you're essentially walking through this perpetual stagnant summer.
Exactly. And because of the marvels of our modern global supply chain, by eating those exact same foods 365 days a year, you are inadvertently tricking your own cellular biology into thinking that time is just standing entirely still.
It is a fascinating and, completely invisible disconnect. We basically engineered a food system where seasonality feels utterly obsolete.
Yeah, completely obsolete.
But our DNA, and more importantly, the trillions of microbes in our gut, they never receive that software update. I mean, they are actively waiting for chemical signals that we simply stop sending.
Okay, let's unpack this because usually when we talk about a grocery run, efficiency is the sole objective, right?
Oh, for sure. Get in, get out.
Right. We grab a cart, we throw in the standard bag of apples, those bright orange carrots, the usual leafy greens, and we get out.
Just checking boxes on a list.
Exactly. We treat food as basic fuel, like swapping out carbon for carbon and completely ignoring the complex biological updates those foods are actually supposed to provide.
And that's where we run into trouble.
So today we are taking a stack of research on seasonal biology, evolutionary digestion, and ancestral diets to basically break that trance. And to do that, we're anchoring this whole deep dive around one highly underrated, structurally fascinating root vegetable, which is the parsnip.
Yes, the humble parsnip.
Right, the parsnip. We're using it to understand what we are actually doing to our bodies when we just completely override the rhythm of the earth.
And the parsnip really serves as the perfect Trojan horse for this topic. I mean, walking past it isn't just a missed culinary opportunity, right? We are ignoring profound biochemical data.
Biochemical data, I love that framing.
Yeah, because when we opt for familiar year-round produce, we aren't just eating the less flavorful vegetable. We are actively starving specific, highly specialized microbial populations in our digestive tract that actually rely on the chemical shifts induced by winter weather.
Okay, so let's talk about those chemical shifts. Because if I look at the nutritional label on, say, a mass-produced carrot versus a seasonal parsnip that was pulled from frozen soil, they might look fairly similar, right?
On paper, yeah, they look almost identical.
Like in terms of basic macronutrients or generic vitamin C content, you wouldn't see a difference.
Right, but the standard nutritional label is just hopelessly two-dimensional. It completely misses this biological phenomenon called xenohormesis.
Xenohormesis.
Yeah, xenohormesis, which is basically the concept that environmental stress on a plant, like, say, a sudden frost or nutrient-scarce soil, or even a specific winter pest, that stress forces the plant to synthesize unique protective compounds to ensure its own survival.
Wait, so the plant is basically manufacturing its own localized biological armor.
Exactly that. Like when a parsnip stays in the frozen ground, it rapidly converts its complex starches into simpler sugars. And it doesn't do this to taste better for human consumption.
Right, it's just trying to survive.
Exactly. It does it
Uh,
because sugar water has a lower freezing point. So it acts as a literal biological antifreeze to prevent the plant's cell walls from rupturing in the frost.
Wow.
And alongside those sugars, the plant produces this highly distinct profile of polyphenols and antioxidants designed purely for cold weather defense.
So when we consume that winter harvested parsnip, we are essentially ingesting the plant's survival data. Like we are downloading its chemical response to the cold.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
But how does our mammalian biology actually translate a plant's antifreeze and frost defense mechanisms into something physiologically useful for us?
Well, we've co-evolved to utilize those exact botanical stress compounds as metabolic triggers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so when those specific winter polyphenols hit our system, they activate our own cellular defense mechanisms. They upregulate the enzymes in our bodies that manage winter-specific inflammation and bolster our immune responses against cold weather pathogens.
And I'm guessing you just cannot get that biochemical payload from a tomato grown in a temperature-controlled, artificially lit greenhouse in December.
Not a chance. You absolutely cannot.
Because that greenhouse tomato hasn't experienced a single day of stress in its entire life.
Exactly.
It looks cosmetically perfect, sure, but biochemically, it is just entirely lazy. It hasn't been forced to produce any of those protective compounds.
Right. It's cosmetically perfect, but nutritionally void. What's fascinating here is that even if it had managed to produce a fraction of those nutrients, modern global transport just aggressively degrades whatever is left.
Because it's just sitting on a truck or a boat for weeks.
Right. Volatile compounds, specifically certain phytonutrients and crucial enzymes, they begin degrading the literal minute a crop is severed from its root system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so a strawberry shipped across an ocean in January, it might take 2 weeks to reach your plate. And by the hour, it is hemorrhaging the very micro-compounds that justify eating it in the first place.
Which brings up the inevitable supplement question, right? Because if the greenhouse tomato is chemically lazy and the shipped strawberry is severely degraded by transit time, it's like listening to the exact same pop song on repeat every single day.
Yeah, you just go totally numb to it.
Exactly. Your body just stops reacting. So why shouldn't I just bypass the produce aisle entirely and take a highly engineered multivitamin?
Ah, the multivitamin argument.
I mean, I can swallow a capsule that guarantees 100% of my daily antioxidants without having to hunt down a frost-bitten parsnip, right?
I get the logic, but the human digestive tract does not operate like a spreadsheet.
Okay, fair.
You can't just balance the molecular ledger with isolated chemicals. Nutrients in a whole seasonal plant, they exist within a highly complex architecture known as the food matrix.
The food matrix.
Right, so the vitamins, the polyphenols, the minerals, they are all physically and chemically bound to specialized structural fibers.
So the matrix is essentially a sophisticated biological delivery system.
Exactly.
It sounds a lot like a timed-release pharmaceutical capsule, you know?
Yeah.
Where the physical casing of the plant fiber prevents a massive blood sugar spike, while simultaneously shuttling the fragile vitamin payload deep down into the lower intestine where it actually belongs.
That is the perfect mechanistic analogy, honestly. An isolated chemical in a gelatin capsule simply dumps its contents into your stomach acid, where, a massive percentage of it is immediately destroyed or flushed out through your kidneys.
So you completely lose the targeted, slow-release delivery.
Entirely. Furthermore, those specialized structural fibers in a winter roots vegetable aren't just packaging, they are required fuel.
Fuel for what, specifically?
They feed the specific gut bacteria that manufacture short-chain fatty acids, like butyrate, which actively regulate your winter immune system.
Oh.
Yeah, so a pill provides a lonely, isolated compound, but the seasonal food matrix provides the context, the physical delivery mechanism, and the necessary gut nourishment all simultaneously.
But this reliance on the food matrix didn't just develop in a vacuum, right?
No.
It is a direct result of how human digestion evolved over millennia to handle the cyclical availability of food.
Correct.
And here's where it gets really interesting, and where I actually have to strongly push back on the popular ancestral diet argument found in a lot of the literature we looked at.
Okay, I'm curious to hear where the friction is for you on this one.
Well, when we romanticize our ancestors eating tubers and tough roots out of the frozen ground in January, aren't we just romanticizing a desperate survival mechanism?
You mean that they didn't have a choice?
Exactly. They were eating parsnips and rutabagas because they were literally starving and nothing else was alive above the snow line.
Right.
Today, I have the incredible luxury of optimal year-round nutrition right at my fingertips. Why should I intentionally mimic the dietary restrictions of early humans who are just trying not to freeze to death?
That is the most frequent critique of evolutionary nutrition, and it stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of what the word optimal actually means for our microbiome.
Okay, how so?
Eating those dense winter roots wasn't merely desperate survival. It was a necessary physiological reset. The human microbiome actually physically shifts its bacterial populations between summer and winter.
Wait, really? The actual architectural composition of the bacteria changes based on the season?
Dramatically. Extensive research into modern hunter-gatherer tribes, such as the Hadza in Tanzania, reveals that their microbiome diversity fluctuates cyclically.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. In the wet season, when fresh berries, honey, and simple carbohydrates are abundant, certain bacterial strains absolutely dominate the gut.
Right.
But in the dry season, which mirrors winter and other climates,
Yeah.
when their diet shifts out of necessity to dense fibrous roots and tubers, completely different bacterial populations bloom in order to break down those highly complex fibers.
So we essentially have like a summer software and a winter software running in our gut ecosystem.
That's exactly it. And the winter software relies exclusively on the dense, specialized fibers of root vegetables to stay functional.
So when you eat those shipped-in summer strawberries and delicate greenhouse spinach in the middle of December,
You are feeding summer foods to winter bacteria.
Yeah.
You are essentially starving the very bacterial populations that are waiting for the complex fibers they need to produce immune-boosting compounds.
Wow. We are given the biological engine the completely wrong fuel at the wrong time.
Precisely.
So if I am eating a summer diet 365 days a year, those fiber-loving winter bacteria don't just sit there waiting, right? They
Yeah.
actively die off.
Yeah, they diminish significantly, which
Right.
creates this massive cascading effect on your overall health. Those winter-specific bacteria are heavily responsible for maintaining the tight junctions of the gut lining and signaling the systemic immune system.
It's all connected.
By overriding the seasonal shift with the convenience of a modern grocery store, we trade a highly resilient, adaptable microbiome for a stagnant, fragile one.
Yeah, we mistake the constant, easy availability of summer fruits for optimal nutrition.
Exactly, when in reality, optimal biological health requires the cyclical stress and recovery cycle that only seasonal eating provides.
Okay, so the biology is begging for this seasonal rotation. The evolutionary mechanics make complete sense, but then we run headfirst into the reality of the modern kitchen.
Yeah.
The kitchen, right, because most people tuning into this deep dive, they understand macronutrients, they know what a carbohydrate is, and they generally want to eat well. But there is a distinct heavy psychological friction when it comes to actually utilizing unfamiliar hyper-seasonal ingredients. It's like staring at a blank canvas. It's paralyzing if you think you have to paint a masterpiece, right? We see a pale, strange-looking parsnip, and intimidation just sets in.
Yeah, and that friction usually comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of culinary science.
How do you mean?
Well, we assume that a robust, dense winter root, like a parsnip, a turnip, or a rutabaga, requires elaborate, Michelin-level technique to make it palatable. We think we have to mask the earthy, sometimes bitter defensive compounds that the plant built up for its winter survival.
Right. We treat the raw ingredient like a problem that needs to be solved. Like we need heavy sauces, complex recipes, and hours of prep work.
Which completely destroys the delicate volatile compounds we just discussed. The biochemical beauty of these seasonal foods is that the cooking process itself is what unlocks their nutritional density.
So we don't need to mask anything.
We don't need to mask anything. The research emphasizes that simple, targeted heat application, specifically high-temperature roasting, is a chemical catalyst, not just a way to make food hot.
Okay, so we're talking about the Maillard reaction here.
Yes, absolutely.
We are taking those defensive starches the plant built up to survive the frost and using thermal energy to break them down into highly complex caramelized sugars.
And that specific thermal reaction creates hundreds of brand new flavor compounds while physically softening the dense structural matrix of the plant's fibers.
Oh, so it's doing the digestive work for us, partially.
Exactly. This process makes those trapped polyphenols vastly more bioavailable to our digestive tract. When you take a parsnip, chop it, toss it in high-quality olive oil, and roast it at high heat, the lipids in the oil actively bind with the fat-soluble vitamins inside the vegetable.
So you aren't just throwing together a quick side dish.
No, you're literally engineering the optimal delivery system for those winter-specific nutrients.
That is so cool. When you understand the biochemistry of what is actually happening in the oven, the entire cooking process stops feeling like a tedious chore. You aren't just following a recipe out of obligation. You're participating in a chemical transformation.
It's empowering.
It really is. It turns dinner prep into a biological ritual.
And that psychological shift from chore to ritual is paramount for sustainable health.
Because a chore is mindless.
Right. You microwave a bag of pre-washed, mass-produced spinach because you feel an obligation to eat something green. But a ritual implies intention.
Intention.
It acknowledges that you are taking a plant that survived the winter frost, unlocking its specific nutritional payload through basic thermal chemistry,
Yeah.
and feeding the specific seasonal microbes waiting in your gut.
But what does this mean for how we actually sit down to consume that food? Because if I spend 40 minutes perfectly roasting a seasonal root vegetable to unlock its bioavailable polyphenols, and then I inhale it in 4 minutes while scrolling through emails on my phone and barely chewing, I feel like I'm still missing a crucial piece of the physiological puzzle.
Oh, you would be completely short-circuiting the brain-gut axis.
Really?
Yeah. Mindful consumption is often pitched as this soft Zen philosophy, but it is actually a hard physiological requirement for optimal digestion. The cephalic phase of digestion, which is the biological process that begins in the brain long before food even hits your stomach, relies entirely on focused sensory input.
Meaning the brain needs to actively register the smell, the sight, and the texture of the food to tell the gut what software to boot up.
Through the vagus nerve, yes. When you intentionally notice the caramelized aroma of the roasted parsnip, and you pay close attention to the dense, fibrous texture as you chew, your brain signals the stomach to release highly specific gastric juices.
Okay, so it's prepping the system.
Right, and it simultaneously primes the lower intestine to expect the incoming rush of complex fibers. If you are deeply distracted by a screen or a stressful email, that neural signaling is severely blunted.
So the food just enters a digestive tract that is essentially asleep at the wheel.
Exactly, which leads to malabsorption and systemic inflammation.
Wow. We are right back to the idea of the biological illusion. The ultimate modern disconnect isn't just that we insist on eating summer foods in the dead of winter, it's that our minds are completely disconnected from the physical, chemical act of nourishing our own biology.
True, sustainable wellness is built entirely on compounding moments of alignment. It requires aligning the food we buy with the actual season we are living in, aligning our cooking methods to maximize the bioavailability of those specific plants, and aligning our attention with the meals sitting in front of us.
So what does this all mean? Well, we want to give you a brilliant, highly actionable challenge to leave you with this week. We want you to actively break the trance of the grocery aisle.
Yes, step out of the autopilot.
Bypass the biological illusion of the perpetual mass-produced summer. Track down a parsnip, a celery root, or whatever hyper-seasonal vegetable is currently defying the weather outside your window.
Something local and seasonal.
Right. Roast it, simply to trigger that Maillard reaction and unlock those fat-soluble vitamins. And when you finally sit down to eat it, put the phone in another room. Let your brain register the seasonal shift, stimulate that vagus nerve, and feed the winter software running in your microbiome.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the implications are actually quite profound. We've spent this time exploring how deeply intertwined our cellular health is with the shifting local rhythms of the Earth.
Yeah.
We rely on the stress of the frost to produce the xenohormetic compounds that shield our own cells. We rely on the dense fibers of winter to cultivate a resilient, adaptable microbiome.
We physically require the changing of the guard.
We do. Which brings us back to the most critical question of modern nutrition. What happens when we refuse to let the seasons change on our plates? If we continue to feed our bodies the exact same mass-produced, chemically lazy foods 365 days a year, we aren't just missing out on flavor or culinary variety. We are inadvertently tricking our own biology into thinking that time is standing entirely still, effectively trapping our immune systems and our gut microbiomes in a perpetual, stagnant summer.
Trapping our biology in a perpetual, stagnant summer. That is an incredibly haunting way to look at a uniform clamshell of January strawberries.
It really makes you think twice.
It completely reframes the microscopic stakes of every choice we make in the produce section. I want to warmly thank you for joining us on this exploration today. Keep questioning the convenient systems built around you, actively break your autopilot this week, and stay curious until our next deep dive.